Channel 7. This is Viewpoint.
Welcome to Viewpoint. I'm Doug Petcash. My guest today is Idaho Governor Brad Little. We'll be talking about the big issues that came out of the 2023 legislative session. After a slow start that saw lawmakers send only 15 bills to the governor's desk in the first 8 weeks of the session, they sent another 315 to him over the final 5 weeks. The House and Senate passed and the governor signed bills on public education, transportation, water, infrastructure, and public safety, including a pay increase for state law enforcement. They also approved nearly $140 million in property tax relief. The governor vetoed the first go at property tax relief, but then signed an adjusted bill. The governor also signed into law some bills on issues that prompted vigorous debate. The so-called bathroom bill requires all Idaho public schools to maintain bathrooms and changing rooms on the basis of biological sex, the sex a person was assigned at birth, or face possible civil fines. The abortion trafficking law makes it illegal for anyone to transport a minor across state lines for an abortion without the parents' or guardian's permission. And the governor signed a bill banning transgender and transitioning children or children with gender dysphoria from receiving any type of hormones or puberty blockers or surgeries. The governor vetoed a bill aimed at restricting minors from accessing harmful materials in school and community libraries. He wrote in his transmittal letter to the House of Representatives that the ambiguity of the bill will have unintended consequences for Idaho libraries and their patrons. Governor Little went into the legislative session with a huge public education agenda as well. In his State of the State address, he proposed investing $410 million of the state's record $1.6 billion budget surplus into public education in Idaho. The legislature basically approved his whole proposal. That includes the Idaho Launch Grant Program, which will provide $8,000 grants to qualifying Idaho high school seniors to use at any Idaho community college, career technical program, or workforce training program for jobs that are in high demand in the state. The increased pay for all teachers, including bumping up starting teacher pay to more than $47,000 a year. The governor says that puts Idaho in the top 10 nationally for starting teacher salaries. The legislature also increased funding for public schools by 16.4% and made the Empowering Parents Grant program permanent. The program provides help to eligible families to pay for things such as computers, internet access, instructional materials, and tutoring. The idea is to help students make up for learning loss caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll dive into the governor's education agenda later in the show, but first, some of the other big issues that came out of this year's legislative session. Of course, my guest is Idaho's Republican Governor, Brad Little. Governor Little, thank you for your time today and for being here.
My pleasure.
Well, let's start off with some of the issues that did see some of that vigorous debate. In your transmittal letter to the House on the gender-affirming care ban, you wrote that you, quote, recognize our society plays a role in protecting minors from surgeries or treatments that can irreversibly damage their healthy bodies. However, as policymakers, we should take great caution whenever we consider allowing the government to interfere with loving parents and their decisions about what is best for their children. And the American Academy of Pediatrics does recommend gender-affirming care for kids who are struggling with gender dysphoria. My question is, why did you ultimately decide to ban this option for parents who believe their children need this care?
Well, for the most part, I don't write legislation. I get what comes to my desk, and some instances I do. There were obviously the surgery part of that. I think nearly everybody agreed about it. Some of those things are still available, dependent upon how they're prescribed for those children. And then there was another earlier part of the bill that addressed some other legislation we'd done in previous years that got taken out of it. But, you know, I stand by my transmittal letter. We will see what happens. I think the bigger issue to me is behavioral health and mental health services for these kids that are, whether we hear about them from their family or we hear about them from the school or a faith-based group. How do we help these kids get up to where they're understand all the consequences of what they're doing, and they get older to make their own decisions.
You know, Republicans often argue smaller government, less government intrusion. Do you think that this contradicts that with moving in this direction and telling parents about?
Well, there's certain standards we have in law enforcement and public safety that we have that everybody's guaranteed, and this is in maybe somewhat of a gray area there. We want everybody in Idaho to feel comfortable, but you know, the fact that in some states there's a significant amount of of surgery taking place. It hasn't taken place here. This bill addresses that. It does address the other part of it. And like I say, I don't get very many pieces of perfect legislation across in my mind. Somebody else may think they're perfect.
Under the law, doctors would be charged with a felony for providing gender-affirming care. Doctors can also be, of course, prosecuted for providing abortions. We recently saw that Bonner General Health and Sandpoint discontinued obstetrical services, partly blaming the legal and political climate in the state and the strict abortion laws, as well as the loss of doctors. Do you worry that some of these strict laws addressing abortion are going to push more doctors out of the state and nurses when we already have a shortage in those positions?
I worry about healthcare capacity in the state. It's been one of my #1 priorities to try and get more residents, try and get more nurses, try and get more nurse practitioners. Our launch program is going to do a great assistance to getting people into the nursing industry. I met with all the hospitals last week. But obstetrics in a small hospital has always been very, very expensive. And hospitals have had it, not had it. Sandpoint is a tough situation because they're a long ways away from a hospital compared to Emmett, my local hospital, that, a lot of the kids and a lot of the babies in Emmett are born in either Meridian or Boise or Nampa.
Yeah, I believe the folks in Sandpoint now have to go to Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah, that's an issue. But the healthcare system has been under duress for a long time, and we've got a lot of initiatives, including our higher education and our launch initiative, to try and help bring that up. We're the fastest growing state, and as a result of being fastest growing state, you got to grow healthcare capacity.
And I guess ICOM, the Idaho College of Osteopathic Medicine, will start soon to show some of that.
Those kids they're not practicing, they're in their residence, and in fact, to ICOM's credit, the number of students that have Idaho connections are higher than what they projected when they first opened up. So that's because if they're raised here, go to school here, do their residency here, there's a high probability they'll stay here.
Why did you support the bill that would require all Idaho public schools to maintain bathrooms and changing rooms on the basis of biological sex?
Well, that was an agreement. The education establishment agreed to it. Schools make accommodations, and there was agreement among the school trustees and the school boards and the legislature for that particular piece of legislation.
Are you concerned that I've heard in some circles that they believe the reasonable accommodations provision is a little too vague?
Well, I know from talking to school administrators that that a lot of that reasonable accommodations taken place today. It has been for a long time. So it's have faith in those school trustees.
Do you expect any of these bills that we've talked about, laws, to be challenged in court? And do you worry about that?
There's always a possibility of that happening. Of course, on the pro-life abortion issue, that is because there's been so many changes at the federal level and even the state level. There's a lot of moving parts there, and some of those were addressed this year. We'll probably have to address some more later.
You vetoed the harmful materials in libraries bill. What were your concerns about it?
Well, it should be no surprise, you talked about it at the intro into the program, that literacy and education is my #1 priority. And so many of these small communities have a very small budget, and there were several aspects of it. Obviously, the $2,500 civil fine per incidence could break some of those small libraries. I don't want pornography in library as much as anybody else, but I've had discussions since the session about what we do with libraries to where people are comfortable that their children aren't exposed to pornography.
And it depends on how parents would define that anyway.
That was one of the other parts of that law that I was afraid that the interpretation would be detrimental to libraries. And there was another bill that didn't get through the Senate that address the real problem with pornography, which is phones and computers. And the debate on that was pretty significant, that that's where the real problem is if you're worried about pornography, and not in the library.
Not in the libraries. You also vetoed the first property tax relief bill, and then some adjustments were made, and you signed the second version of that. What do you think about it that works well to give a lot of Idahoans property tax relief?
Well, of course, that was my proposal at the State of the State, was here's $120 million of ongoing money to relieve property taxes. And then obviously the legislature writes tax legislation. Some years I've had a bigger part in it. I didn't have any part in this particular legislation. And when it got over, and I was concerned about the road part of it. I was concerned about the public defense. It was a 25-page bill. And when we looked at all the different consequences of it, they had to write 3 more bills to correct the problems with the first bill. But I was pleased with it at the end of the day.
And is this the bill also that eliminated an election day?
Yes, the March election
school
day.
bonds and things like that. Are you worried? Do you worry
Yes.
of losing that particular date and timing?
Particularly, you know, when we used to have bond elections all the time. And over the years, we've narrowed the number of dates and I concurred with that. But March was really identified as critical because the school districts do a lot of their budgeting in June and July, and so in March they need to know what their budget is, and that's why I was less than pleased that they took the March date away, and the districts offered up. The school administrators offered up August. If we got to have an extra date, it needs to be March and not August, but that didn't make it into the bill.
But the overriding issue of providing that tax relief.
Oh yeah,
decided
that was, I mean, we have done record tax relief in Idaho. You have received more property tax or more tax relief per person than any other state since I got my job. And property tax was the next natural issue because we're basically victims of our own success because of growing values. People's property taxes have gone up.
I want to talk real briefly, if we can, about water projects. I mean, we have a great snowpack this year. It looks like it's not going to be a drought situation this year, but it has been for many years. How important is it, the investment that the legislature and yourself are making in water projects to stabilize the water supply?
It is very important. Here in the Boise Valley, extending the height of Anderson, which not only would it be water storage, the flooding that's taking place outside right now, that will give us a little more of a buffer, but we need that long-term storage. But the $400 million over 2 years that went into water is for both subsurface water and surface water storage, and then better management of the water system. As the state continues to grow, we have got to be focused on it. And despite the fact that we've got a above average water year, those problems won't go away. And there will be a lot of action this year to address the long-term sustainability of our water supply.
And the Snake River Aquifer.
Yep.
All right. Governor, we're going to take a time out right there, but last year, the state had a record $1.6 billion budget surplus. The governor asked the legislature to invest a big chunk of that in public education, and they did. After the break, the investments in our schools and students.
If you need work done around the house, it can be hard to find a reliable contractor around here. They're juggling jobs, they won't call you back. Well, if you need windows or doors, Renewal by Anderson's reliability is one of the many reasons thousands of local customers have trusted us. As the replacement window division of Anderson, we've removed the typical contractor from the equation. Our certified master installers are respectful of your home, and they clean, I mean really clean, when they're done. Now, some homeowners have this notion that vinyl windows are a good choice, but you may not realize that vinyl is just plastic. And these days, plastic often gets thrown away. Either way, plastic vinyl windows don't seem like the best option to protect you from the elements. Our composite Fibrex material is 2 times stronger than vinyl. And unlike those windows made who knows where, our windows are custom built right here in America. Okay, so you want a price. Other companies might give you a wild guess at a price over the phone. We just don't think that's ethical. We'll visit your home, see exactly what you have, and then give you an exact price quote. And we'll honor that price for a whole year, so there's no pressure.
We had been through the let's go the cheapest route we can and try the big box store, and it ended up badly for us. We didn't want a repeat of that. We wanted somebody that we could trust, somebody with a quality product so they would last.
This month, Renewal by Andersen is offering a super deal on windows and patio doors. Buy one window or patio door and get the next one 30% off. And we have great financing available. Before April 30th, buy one window or patio door and get the next one 30% off. Plus, take advantage of our great financing options. For a free appointment, call 208-427-8900.
Welcome back to Viewpoint. As I mentioned earlier, the governor went into the legislative session with a big agenda for public education, and the legislature basically approved all of his proposal. The governor has said since his first campaign that education is his top priority, and you heard him reiterate that in this program today. This year, the legislature approved the Idaho Launch Grant Program, which will provide $8,000 grants to qualifying Idaho high school seniors to use at any Idaho community college, career technical program, or workforce training program for jobs that are in high demand in the state. The increased pay for all teachers, including bumping up starting teacher pay. The legislature also increased funding for public schools and made the Empowering Parents Grant Program permanent. Again, that program provides help to eligible families to pay for things such as computers, internet access, instructional materials, and tutoring. Governor Little is my guest today. And Governor, what do you see as the key component of that education agenda this year?
Well, the fact that we're now competitive for starting teacher pay and for veteran teachers. Even though we were getting up there because of where we are, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Utah, sometimes in Wyoming, paid more. And the last thing I wanted was for our best and brightest kids to go out of state to teach. What we've done by both teacher pay and teacher benefits, if we've created a real incentive for our kids that are in high school now and going off to college to be teachers to teach our kids in the future. So teacher compensation along with literacy, which was my first initiative as governor, was really important for K-12. But after high school, as you said, any high school senior that graduates, we've always covered part of the cost for a journalist or a political scientist or an animal scientist or an accountant or a lawyer, but we didn't do anything for career technical. There were some programs, but if you wanted to be a plumber or welder, a machinist, we didn't have funding for that. Launch, and I'm very thankful that we got it across the finish line, accomplishes that. And the internal rate of return to the state for putting the money into launch and the high quality jobs and the higher incomes. We all know that the construction industry, Channel 7 featured it yesterday.
The construction combine.
Construction combine, about how desperate they are for people to do plumbing, electrical work, HVAC. Launch will go a long way towards helping those kids.
And that will kick in 2024, I believe. What are your expectations for it?
Well, we've got to build some capacity, and healthcare is a big part of that. We need more nurses and nurse practitioners and physician's assistants. But obviously the construction trades and the real technical trades, I think the money that was made available by this legislation that will be available to the kids that graduate from high school a year from right now will make a big difference. Matter of fact, educators tell me that so many kids that, they didn't have means, their parents didn't have money, they were going to get out of high school and kind of somewhat aimlessly wander around. Now they have a purpose. Now they know that they need to study harder the last 2 or 3 days of high school, so they're better prepared to go through these programs to learn these technical skills that'll basically put them on a trajectory for a much better life.
And have a lot of it paid for.
And stay here in Idaho.
And stay here in Idaho. That is the key to that program, though, isn't it?
Yep, exactly.
Got to keep them here. The legislature also made the Empowering Parents grants permanent. Since since it started, have a lot of parents taken advantage of this? And again, the idea was to make up for that learning loss during the pandemic.
Well, it's been fully subscribed, and I'm certain it will continue to be fully subscribed, but there's a hard dollar limit on it, so getting into it's a little tougher than it was before because it's been fully subscribed. But there's different kids have different challenges, and if we can, and they can't just buy anything. They have to buy something that's basically qualifies under those grants to help those kids get caught up, and that gives parents kind of the keys to helping their kids, particularly parents that don't have the means that other parents do.
I want to get your take on the education savings account debate. We heard a lot about that early. Nothing actually ended up going through, but these essentially would be, parents would be able to use public tax money to send kids to private school. That was one of the big parts of the debate. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I've been for choice my legislative career and my executive branch career all along. And this year I signed 2 bills to help charter schools, to help them get started, to help them expand, to help them with capacity. We also passed a bill for open enrollment, which basically says if you don't think your public school, your zip code is adequate, your kids can go to a public school elsewhere. We are ranked as having the most options and choice of almost all the states. I think we're 3rd best. We don't pay for private schools in Idaho.
Do you think that is constitutionally illegal?
Well, it's probably questionable.
Would be challenged.
Yeah,
it will be. For sure. All right, Governor, we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we'll look ahead to the rest of the year and beyond that with the Governor.
3 dealers battling to save you thousands. It's the annual Spring RV Wars. Up to 35% of MSRP. Over 150 new and used RVs to choose from. Slide into savings April 20th through the 23rd at the Roaring Springs parking lot. RV Wars.
Just 3 words tell you everything you need to know. They tell you why we employ more than 2,000 workers at our factory in Virginia Beach, and why over 10,000 local steel dealers are putting battery power in the hands of Americans. Not everyone can say them, but we can. Made in America. Real steel. Find yours.
We so amazing.
The stylish Chevy Equinox RS. And Chevy Blazer RS.
So captivating.
You don't have to be an influencer to be an influencer. The RS family of Chevy SUVs. Definitely worth a follow. Get 1.9% financing plus make no monthly payments for 90 days when you finance with GM Financial on all 2023 Equinox models, or get $1,500 cash allowance on all 2023 Equinox models.
See your Treasure Valley Chevy dealers today.
Has your cable TV lost its spark? Do you suffer from the buffer? You deserve reliable TV without the hassle and the frustration. A+ Satellite is your premier local dish retailer, serving the Treasure Valley with reliable TV and real customer service for over 15 years. If you have Sparklight TV, switching to dish with A+ Satellite could save you 40% per year. Stop in for a face-to-face with A+ Satellite at Fairview and Eagle, behind Krispy Kreme.
3 dealers battling to save you thousands. It's the annual Spring RV Wars. Up to 35% of MSRP. Over 150 new and used RVs to choose from. Slide into savings April 20th through the 23rd at the Roaring Springs parking lot. RV Wars.
And welcome back. We have a couple more minutes with Governor Brad Little. Governor, now that the session is over and there's 2/3 of the year left, what's going to be your focus in 2023?
Well, implementation of our programs. As the executive branch, our job is to get the work done and give public the most possible confidence in what we're doing. obviously, the launch proposal, the Workforce Development Council, because that's a brand new program, we'll be doing all we can to help them make these careers available to these kids that wouldn't have had a chance before. Obviously, in the education area, what we can do to help them, I want to continue to get literacy rates up because that COVID break put us a little behind, but the numbers I'm seeing are very good in that area. Water, we'll be doing a lot of things on water, and then public safety. We've got some more resources to help with public safety. The fentanyl issue is very concerning to me and the people of Idaho, and whether it's in the behavioral health side or whether it's law enforcement side, we'll be working on public safety also.
And the state is working to build more behavioral and mental health facilities.
We are quintupling our capacity. We didn't used to have crisis centers for somebody that was having a problem. They either went to jail or the hospital. We have crisis centers. We didn't have places for long-term recovery from addiction. We have those now. Our youth that were having significant problems had to be sent out of state. We're going to build that capacity out. And then what we need to do in behavioral health at an early age to where we can address some of these mental health problems early and help these kids early and before their problems get to manifest themselves into a danger to themselves or society.
I think finally, Governor, what do you see, beyond 2023, maybe towards the end of your second term, in terms of what the big issues and maybe the big opportunities that Idaho will be facing?
Well, coping with growth, roads, water, sewer, broadband, schools, probably school funding. There was a legislative committee that worked on that. Part of the property tax bill is going to help somewhat there. Part of the money we put into salaries and benefits is going to help there. But basically coping with growth, which is schools, water, roads, and then give people confidence that their state's being run well. If the economy slows down, I tell everybody, I don't know what the world economy or the national economy is going to do, but all I know with what we've done in Idaho, you're going to be in better shape in Idaho than any other state, and that's looks to me to be the case.
The secret is out, I guess. Everybody's coming.
Don't tell anybody.
They already know. They already
secret.
know. Yeah. Governor Little, thank you so much for your time today. I do appreciate
Thanks,
it. Well, that is all of our time for this week's Viewpoint. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Doug Petcash. I'll see you tonight on the news at 5 and 10, and then right back here next Sunday morning for another Viewpoint. Next week, we're focusing on Idaho's biggest giving event, Idaho Gives, which is coming up May 1st through the 4th. Have a great day.